Afternoon, and thanks everyone for being here. Let me begin by acknowledging two members of the City Council who are standing with me now. Alderman Chris Taliaferro, who's the chairman of the City Council Committee on Public Safety, and Alderman Jason Irvin, who's the chairman of the City Council Black Caucus. Trust with our city, our police department, and the law department, and most of all, trust in me, has been questioned as the events related to Miss Anjanette Young in the outrageous search of her home came to light last week. Let me just say again, bearing witness to what Miss Young experienced was and continues to be traumatic and disturbing. It has shaken and unnerved me. And I know that for the many, many conversations that I have had since that video came to light last week, people, and particularly black people, not here in Chicago, but really across the country, feel angry and feel violated. I also feel more motivated than ever. Now is the time for action. We have to take action to address the changes to policies and regulations to protect all Chicagoans against any kind of abuse, particularly one in their homes, and to ensure that our city government is as transparent as it can be. We will right the wrongs inflicted on Ms. Young, and the wrongs inflicted on many others like her, others who are disproportionately people of color, and repair the trust that is necessary for us to make the reforms that our city and our values demand. It began last week by telling Ms. Young that I am personally sorry for what happened to her. She should not have had to endure that kind of traumatic event in her home. The hard work of rebuilding trust continues with holding people accountable and making sure that no one ever experiences this kind of traumatic invasion and indignity again. As you're all now aware, yesterday I sought and accepted the resignation of our Corporation Counsel, Mark Flessner. And while this was a difficult step, it was a necessary step. It was necessary in order for us to be able to move forward as a city with the full faith and confidence of Chicago's residents and communities. And as we undergo our search for a new Corporation Counsel, I have appointed Celia Meza, who stands here to my right, to serve in that role in an acting capacity. Now, Celia is no stranger to city government or the law department. She's worked in the law department on two separate occasions, last of which was as a deputy counsel for employment litigation. More recently, Celia came into my administration from the very beginning as in a newly created role called Mayor's Counsel and Senior Ethics Advisor. Celia is somebody that I have known for 25 years. We worked together in the U.S. Attorney's Office when we were both assistant U.S. attorneys. She's a woman I know of impeccable character and will bring that to her new role as acting Corporation Counsel. My charge to her was simple: lead with integrity and transparency. Make sure that all the lawyers and personnel in the Department of Law never forget that they serve the people. No matter the case or controversy, when a person claims injury by a city actor, every person deserves our respect, and we must approach every matter with humility. And I have every confidence that Celia will ensure that that simple but important charge is understood and, more importantly, acted upon by the men and women of the Department of Law. Further, under the direction of Superintendent Brown, all the officers involved in the raid in Ms. Young's home have been taken off the street and placed on desk duty. Now, we must respect COPA's independence, but as I have repeatedly told COPA's chief administrator, I firmly believe in the value that justice delayed is justice denied. And frankly, there is no excuse that this matter has languished for a year without any significant movement on the part of COPA. We all need to understand the particulars of why Ms. Young's house was targeted, what happened while the officers were there, and importantly, what happened afterward once they knew and it became clear that they were in the wrong house. Until the COPA investigation is complete, these officers need to be off the street, but that investigation needs to be handled and come to conclusion in an expeditious way. These steps build on many others that we have taken since this matter fully came to light. Most recently, in respect to Ms. Young and her case, last Friday I directed the city's law department to file a supplemental motion with the court to first formally withdraw our action against CBS News, an action which was a colossal mistake. As I said last week, and had I been advised ahead of time, I would never have authorized such a wrong-headed motion to be filed. Again, the media plays an important role in our democracy. And to be clear, we do not stop the publication of any news outlet from doing their job. Never should have happened and will never happen again. I also directed the city's law department to formally withdraw its sanctions against Ms. Young's attorney, Keenan Salter. And further, in our supplemental pleading, we asked the court to take no further action against attorney Salter. Furthermore, last week I directed that all body-worn camera footage be released to Ms. Young, CBS 2, and the public, and that has happened. And as I noted, the initial failure by the law department earlier this year to fail to produce 6 additional videotapes was inadvertent and not intentional, but nonetheless unacceptable and undermined confidence. These 2 actions are underway in addition to other measures, including our top-to-bottom review of why Ms. Young's FOIA request was denied. This measure in particular is part of the broader reform effort we are undertaking in response to this incident. Victims like Ms. Young should have full access to materials on matters involving them, period. As I have stated a number of times now, anytime anyone who is a victim requests information about an incident that happened to them, our government's obligation, which is to say their government's obligation, is to respond to them in a fulsome, transparent, and immediate way. While we're reviewing why Ms. Young's FOIA request was denied, the fact is she should never have had to submit a FOIA request in the first place. Victims should be able to receive the information that they seek. This is and must be an important change that we make going forward. Now, the measures I just outlined build on some of the key changes we already implemented regarding search warrants going back to January of this year, almost a year ago. As you recall, I directed the city's chief risk officer to do a deep dive based in part on the reporting that was done by CBS 2. And that's exactly what happened. As a result of the work of the chief risk officer in conjunction with the police department, changes were implemented that went into effect on January 3rd, 2020, almost a year ago. And let me summarize some of those. Number 1, independent collaboration of information received from a CI has to happen, ending the practice of basing a search warrant solely on the basis of a paid informant. The requirement that body-worn cameras be worn and activated while warrants are executed. The requirement that an internal investigation be launched if a warrant was executed at the wrong address. Provisions to protect children, and a requirement that 2 internal CPD supervisors sign off on a warrant before it is even presented to a prosecutor and the court. Additionally, over the last week, I have directed the law department to provide me with a review of all pending search warrant cases, and Acting Corporation Counsel Mesa will make sure that work is done on an expedited basis. And I want to take this moment to, once again, commend CBS 2 for their efforts in this matter. However, as I said before, while admirable, the media should not be doing our job for us. Where there are wrongs, they must be righted, and we will do so with all deliberate speed. Furthermore, the City Council will be holding a subject matter hearing into this matter tomorrow, which Chairman Taliaferro and Chairman Irvin we'll elaborate on in a moment. This will include CPD, COPA, and any other necessary parties. I will invite Alderman Taliaferro next to the podium in a moment, but before I do, I'd like to close where I began. This past week has been extraordinarily painful for everyone involved. I can only imagine what Ms. Young's world has been like, having to relive this horrible incident over and over again. It's been hard for our city, and particularly our communities of color. I entered public life and assumed this office on a mission to uplift transparency and accountability, and to reform the practices of the past that have left too many of our communities behind for generations. These are the values that are at the core of who I am as a person, but also as a public servant. As I said a moment ago, to have something like this happen is deeply, deeply, personally painful. Trust has been breached. Trust in our city, trust in me. And that is a trust which I understand and will win back. As I said last week, there are a lot of good things that we as a city have done together and want to continue to do to make our city government more accountable, but also to make it more responsive to our residents' needs, particularly in a time of a pandemic, of righteous civic outrage over systemic racism and other things that have deprived people of their ability and their opportunity to live out their God-given talents. We have to step up and we have to do more for all of our residents, not just the clouded few. We have to make sure that our residents' lived experience is reflected in what we do. And this is another one of those important inflection moments. We have an opportunity to right wrongs. But we will be powerless to do any of the things that I and my government envisions to change the trajectory of the city and the lives of so many if we don't have trust, if people don't believe that we stand with them. I know that, and I understand that very deeply and profoundly. Chicago, we will do better because we must do better for you. Every step we have taken and every one that we will take will be with that goal in mind. To do otherwise would be a betrayal of who I am, what I believe in, and more importantly, what my responsibility is to every single resident of this city. It is a responsibility which I seek to address and embody every single day. So I want to thank you, and now I welcome Alderman Taliaferro to the podium.
Good afternoon. Like Mayor Lightfoot, my colleagues, and many of you across this great city, I too am outraged at how within the span of a little over an hour, one of our residents, Ms. Young, was stripped of her dignity and stripped of her respect. And it's because of that I stand here as a father of 2 adult daughters. I stand here as a husband, and I stand here as a son to categorically say that what our Chicago police officers and our Chicago Police Department has done is completely wrong. It's unconscionable that once again we're faced with a video that really does not go with the goals and the morals of our police department or the goals and morals of our city. Ms. Young, we do hear your voice. We hear your cries, and we will take action and hold those that are responsible accountable. In fact, we hear the cries of the city from the north side to the south side, from the lakefront to the west, demanding accountability. And it's with that, I am very thankful to say that our mayor has stepped up and said, without fail, from top to bottom, let's do a legislative review of what happened, the holes that are there, the gaps that are there, the policies that need to be changed. And for that reason and many others, we will be having a top-to-bottom legislative hearing tomorrow at 11 o'clock to find out how we could better serve the residents of the city of Chicago. Our department serves under the motto to protect and to serve. And to Ms. Young, that motto means nothing, because when it came to Ms. Young and many others in this city, that seems to be a cry that is never heard in our black community, to protect and to serve. Our department needs to get back to protecting and serving the residents of this great city. So I want to thank my colleague, the chairman of the Chicago City Council's Black Caucus, for also standing with us to making sure that justice and accountability is done in the city. And with that, I present to you Alderman Jason Irvin, the chairman of the Chicago City Council's Black Caucus. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Taliaferro. Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot for convening on today. The pain and the challenge in which many of us across the city not only saw the case of Anjanette Young, but the other cases that came across in these issues of raids into children and other individuals that whose humanity practically was stripped. When I saw the 3-year-old talk about how a gun was held to her head or pointed at her, to see these things as a father of a 4-year-old myself, my heart went out. And again, this is not something that is new. Unfortunately, it's something that we have to deal with. And with the work of Chairman Taliaferro and our mayor, we will get to the bottom of this. And not only that, but propose and create changes that will ensure that this type of activity does not occur again with children, women in our community. Even at worst, if Ms. Young or the individuals that they go to, the homes they go to, are in the wrong, no one's humanity deserves to be stripped in such a manner as what we saw on that video. So we all understand this, we all know this, and now it's incumbent on us as legislators and as the mayor to fix this, and we will do that. Thank you.
And with that, happy to take any of your questions.
I'm Megan Hickey. I'm a reporter with CBS Chicago.
Right.
We got a big batch of questions, a lot of wrong raid, and then COVID. I'm going to start with wrong raid, if that makes sense. Well, first, just from me, back in August, there was a group of attorneys that were instrumental in the consent decree who sent this enforcement action letter to the city, to the AG's office, to the panel that oversees the consent decree, basically demanding specific reforms to these types of raids. And they, cited our investigation and specific cases in our investigation multiple times. It's been 4 months. Those attorneys never got a response. We never got a response. I think we asked you about it last week, and you said you weren't aware of that particular enforcement action. Have you learned about it since then?
I have, and when the question was asked last week, it was asked in a way that I didn't precisely understand. Yes, there was a letter that was sent, I believe, in early August of this year. As you probably know, there's a very specific process by which issues that the litigants in the consent decree are required to respond to any issues from another litigant. Our law department and the police department have been, my understanding is, engaged through the monitor in addressing those issues. So that is the way that this process has been handled, and I think that work is ongoing.
Are they planning to issue a response in the near future?
There is, as I said, a very specific prescribed way under the terms of the consent decree, and that is the process that we are following.
Okay. Several people asked about Mr. Flessner's departure. Can you give us more specifics just about how involved you were in that resignation? Well,
he worked for me. I saw it and received his resignation yesterday.
This comes from Christian Farr with NBC5, similar, asking if you met with Flessner in person.
I did.
And are you hiring a former judge to investigate the Young CPD raid incident?
We'll be making an announcement about that in the coming days.
Okay. This is from Amy Jacobson. What day did you see the botched raid video, and are there other police body cam videos you are trying to keep from the public?
Well, I have to say I'm offended by the premise of the question. It's offensive to me. There's no cover-up, certainly not by me, none that I would tolerate. So that question, Amy, is offensive.
This is from Kelly Bauer with Block Hub Chicago. Number 1, when and how will your emails about the Anjanette Young raid be released?
We were in the process of gathering all those emails and going through them to make sure that they were responsive. And once that review is complete, we will put them out in entirety. They will be probably on a microsite, but we'll make them available so that the media can see them and the public can see them.
Okay. Number 2, when and how will the city release the other videos of the raid?
I'm not sure what she's asking, but all the videos, my understanding is that all the videos related to Anjanette Young's were released last week at my direction.
Okay, and that included the 6 that weren't originally
That's how
released
we
to
knew
us.
that there were 6 more, yes.
Okay.
So I believe that there are 20 in total, and those were released last week.
Okay. This is from Bill Cameron, WLS-AM. Will you be making public the request for the search warrant in the Young case that would have an affidavit from the lead officer on the case reviewed and approved by a supervisor and a prosecutor?
Under the assumption that the court will authorize us to do so, yes. Any information about that, both the application underlying, if there is an underlying affidavit, and the return, meaning what happens is once a search warrant is executed, there's material and information that has to be returned to the court. I want to make sure that we're releasing as much of that as the court allows.
Okay.
And hopefully it'll be everything.
Looks like that is the wrong, or that's the end of the wrong raids. This is CPD related. Is there any update to your thinking about Alderman Hairston's phone call for arrestees ordinance? Law professors at UChicago and University of Illinois say the city must follow the 1-hour time frame set by state law, and Alderman Hairston has said she is not open to a compromise. Alderman Taliaferro says he is open to a 1-hour time frame if CPD processing procedures are changed. So maybe you want to respond to this as well. This is from Aaron Gettinger.
I won't speak for the alderman, but as been reported and we've said a number of different times, we want to work with Alderman Hairston, absolutely understand the issue in its entirety. And as you may recall, as part of the Police Accountability Task Force report, we embraced a recommendation from a number of different civil rights lawyers, which is to make sure that information in every interrogation room throughout CPD has information about free lawyers that an arrestee can have access to, given phones and so forth. The proposal that we had, which is to provide 3 hours, is consistent with national standards, consistent with LA. There are a number of large police departments that have no standards whatsoever. So I'm confident that in working with Alderman Hairston, we'll be able to reach an appropriate resolution.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know.
Would you like to address it at all?
Chairman, if you...
Thank you, Mayor.
And again, that was from Aaron Gettinger with the Hyde Park Herald.
Okay, and I do recall speaking with the reporter. And my statement was very clear. 1 hour will be very difficult, even under normal circumstances. And I explained my experience as a police officer for over 23 years. Even under normal circumstances, not including a very busy summer night or multiple units in on an arrest, it's very difficult to process an arrest and book an arrestee within a 1 hour time frame. So we would be essentially subjecting the city to a lot of liability. However, I did say, given the current arrest procedures that are used by CPD, unless those procedures are changed, then 1 hour would not be reasonable. And I think we have to also look at and what I've explained to the reporter, even in looking at changing arrest procedures, officer safety has to be very important, has to be of utmost importance. Once an arrestee comes into a district, that's when a more thorough search is completed. But that's when the arresting process begins as well. that's assuming that you could get an interview room or a processing room for your arrestee. So given CPD's current policies and their current arrest procedures, it would be very difficult without changing those to do an arrest within an hour.
Okay. Can I ask one follow-up too?
Yes.
Just back to wrong raids, though. I know over the past maybe year and a half, 2 years or so, we had reached out, the CBS2 investigators had reached out to you specifically because of your position about our investigations into wrong raids and certain examples. And we never got a response. And so I'm wondering why now are you speaking out and coming forward about this issue and this pattern when we had reached out to you several times in the past?
I apologize. I don't recall CBS2 reaching out to me. Generally, when anyone from the press reaches out, I return a call or return an interview as well. But I apologize if I did not recall. All search warrants are very important to me when they are, especially when there's something egregious that has happened as a result of the search warrant. This is one that was very, very, I should say, it really hit the media and hit me personally, the things that I saw with this particular search warrant. And so it deserves my attention. It deserves all of our attention to make sure that this does not happen again. And to anyone that I did not respond to, again, whether they were the victims of an improper search warrant, I apologize to them as well.
Okay, thank you. That's
You're more
all
than
I had.
welcome.
And then I've got some COVID-19 related questions for you, Mayor. This is from Omar Jimenez with CNN. He says, Mayor, as the vaccine continues its rollout, do you feel confident in the current distribution infrastructure in black and brown neighborhoods on the south and west sides, particularly in so-called pharmacy deserts? What is the city's plan to combat any decreased availability simply because of distance?
Well, as Dr. Orr and I mentioned probably now 2 weeks ago when we first started talking about the vaccine coming to Chicago, first of all, we're going to follow the mandates by the CDC. First, making sure that our healthcare workers have access to the vaccine. My understanding is just over the weekend, and it should actually be formally approved, I believe, either today or tomorrow. The CDC has issued a mandate for kind of the next tier, which is going to be people over 75 years old and quote-unquote essential workers. So I believe that we've got the infrastructure to do that. A little more complicated, of course, than doing it in the hospital setting. We're aware of the challenges that we are going to face, both from a logistics standpoint, also from a messaging standpoint. Let me address those in turn. From a logistics standpoint, one of the things that we have been working on for quite some time now is making sure that we're connected up with local doctors, those folks that have offices in neighborhoods, working with federally qualified healthcare centers, another crucial link in the infrastructure chain. And we will also be standing up some mobile vaccine opportunities, but we'll also be working through businesses to make sure that they've got the infrastructure and that we are working with them so that they can identify who their essential workers are and we can get them vaccinated. So there's a lot of logistics, but we have a pretty enormous operation that we stood up to handle that. We've also got to continue making sure that we get the education and the messaging right. And by that I mean this. Many of the people who will be in the next wave of people eligible for vaccines, but also the healthcare workers themselves are people of color. And if you're black, many people have concerns about trusting the healthcare system, even some black healthcare workers, because of the legacy of discrimination by governments against blacks when it comes to healthcare and experiments and so forth. That legacy is still very much alive and well in Chicago and across the country, and we've got to make sure that we're educating people about the safety of this vaccine, and you doing that using trusted community voices. We've enlisted, in the first instance, a panel of experts who are looking at the process by which each of these vaccines have come to market. They've been meeting now for the last couple of weeks. They met again over the weekend, and they'll be making a public pronouncement on the next latest vaccine. In addition to that, going to doctors and nurses and other healthcare practitioners throughout Black and Brown Chicago is going to be, again, critically important. Trusted local voices talking about the safety of this vaccine, why it's important. That is a key part of our education and outreach strategy. And then finally, making sure that we are doing everything we can to have enough doses of the vaccine to address the needs that are out there. So this work is going to be ongoing, probably realistically for the next 6+ months. But what we do need is we need more support from the federal government to make sure that everything that needs to be done at the local level can get done safely, done quickly, done with safety. We need additional resources to make that happen.
Okay. This is from Alexandria Fisher with NBC Chicago. Governor Cuomo is asking the federal government to require testing or ban travelers from England, with a new strain being reported there amid reports Trump may lift the travel on the UK and other European countries this week. What are your thoughts on that, and are there any plans in place for O'Hare to ensure the new strain doesn't make its way through?
So our Department of Public Health has been following this very, very closely since the first notion of this really developed in the public health community far before the current reporting. We are following this very closely. We're digging down. I don't think we know enough yet about what this potential new strain is, how it's transmitted, but believe me, we are following very closely, and we will take all action that's necessary to protect the public.
Okay. I've got a couple more questions coming through. This is from Mark Conkle.
Mark Kunkel.
Conkle with Monumental Stories. Will the law department continue to over-broadly apply exemptions to the Freedom of Information Act related to, quote, ongoing investigations?
Well, we have always invoked whatever appropriate exemptions there are. Everyone now hopefully knows and understands I stand for transparency. And we are going to continue to do everything we can to affirmatively put more information out across a variety of departments. And where there are exemptions that are appropriate under the Freedom of Information Law, we will determine whether or not they apply in any given case. But we can't make, and nor should we make, blanket rules. The Freedom of Information Act requires us to make individualized decisions on the basis of all FOIA requests. But ideally, what we need to be doing is putting as much information out as possible so people don't have to file FOIA requests. We're not there yet, and it's going to take some time to get there. But that is certainly the ideal that I have across city departments.
That would be the goal? Okay. That would be the goal to... You wouldn't even have to file a FOIA. It would just be
look, we're not going to eliminate
downloadable.
FOIA. We're not going to eliminate FOIA entirely. But what I've constantly talked to my team about is making sure that we're doing a regular review of the kinds of requests that are coming in. And if there's some consistent thread that people are asking for that we can easily just put out on a website, we should do that.
Okay. Let's see.
You have more questions?
Yeah, one more. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what the question is exactly. I'm supposed to ask about the letter from 7 aldermen requesting that you appear at tomorrow's joint committee hearing on search warrants. Do you plan to appear?
I have not received any such letter, and I think the aldermen have it covered. This is going to be a very comprehensive subject matter hearing, and I'm happy to answer any questions, as I have been doing every day this week, about any and all issues related to this incident.
Okay.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you.